Please be seated. The footnotes in my New Oxford Study Bible tell me that some of the ancient manuscripts of Revelation say, "Blessed are those who do God's commandments," instead of "Blessed are those who wash their robes." But the image of the people washing their robes put me in mind of an image from Irish mythology. There would be warriors going to battle, and if they were destined to die in that battle, they would see the image of the goddess of battles kneeling at the side of a stream, washing the blood from their clothing. And this, in its turn, made me think of the murdered children and teachers of the school in Uvalde, Texas. Who will wash the blood from their robes? Who will wash the blood from the hands of those who kill? And who will wash the blood from the hands of those who refuse to do anything to stop the killing? We have so many dead to mourn this week, so many names to call out. Victims of war, of racial violence, of greed, of empire. Victims of people who seek and gain power and then refuse to lift a finger to help anyone else if they're not paid handsomely for it. Victims of people who seek and gain power and then just wring their hands in a pathetic parody of comfort and care while pretending they're just so helpless to make any change that might prevent more deaths. Oh, our thoughts and prayers are with the victims and their families. Over and over again, the same refrain: thoughts and prayers, no action, never action. Oh, it's not the right time. It's too soon. We have victims of people who have decided to make the Second Amendment into something it was never intended to be. Not a law, but an idol. A false god behind which they cower and pretend that they have no responsibility or duty to or for anyone but themselves. I envy John his certainty about Jesus's return being soon. And of course, the legend is that John of Patmos was a very old man when he had his vision and wrote Revelation. So for him, Jesus really was coming soon. The rest of us have to live in this imperfect world where the insatiable death cult of the Roman Empire's greed has been reinventing itself and disguising itself time and time again for thousands of years. I also kind of envy John's metaphors and mysticism. This would be so much easier if I could point out greed and violence as literal demons to be defeated by the power of Christ. The demon is Mammon for greed and Satan for violence and wrath, according to a 1409 book called The Lantern of Light. A personified problem like that is so much easier to recognize as an enemy. But instead, we have the much more nebulous concepts of violence, hate, fear, and greed, which are so deeply woven into the foundations of society that we can't even see them until we learn to look for them. And even then, it's a lifelong process of learning that things we've always taken for granted or never even considered, they are in fact the direct causes of some of the evils of society. And it's going to take a whole lot more to fix it than calling in a team of exorcists. In a sense, it's going to take all the people of the world becoming a team of exorcists. The greatest enemy right now, which is being deliberately cultivated by people who don't want the world to change, that is despair. And if by chance you want to call despair by its 1409 demon name, the Lantern of Light named it Abaddon. Despair holds people in place. It makes us feel helpless, makes us begrudgingly accept that this is just the way the world is and there's nothing we can do about it. So we may as well just wait it out until Jesus comes back. Now, here is where the thoughts and prayers come in a way that helps us make a difference. There are prayers and there are prayers. Are we praying to God to come in and fix everything without us having to take any action? There's a little biblical precedent for that. The passage from Revelation just a couple of weeks ago told us how at the end of time, God will wipe away every tear from the eyes of those who have suffered. But there is even more biblical precedent to show us that the disciples were people of action. After the death and resurrection of Jesus, they went around the world they knew. They were evangelizing, yes, but they were also healing and feeding and showing people a new way of light and life right in the face of every way Rome tried to stop them. Can we turn our backs on the world and still call ourselves disciples? I don't believe we can, and I would guess that no one in this room believes that we can either. But by all means, pray as John does for the return of Christ. Pray for the repose of the souls of the murdered. Pray for peace for their families. But then turn and pray for strength. Pray for courage. Pray for a taste of the water of life to keep us going. Then take action. We need to put pressure on the power holders of society, the greed mongers, the people who are never touched by the pain caused by violence and greed. And there are a lot of ways to do this. We have letters and phone calls to elected officials. We can make donations to organizations which are working to curb gun violence. There are demonstrations. We have our own vigil today out in the yard at noon. Church of the Messiah in Detroit is going to be holding a march called Silence the Violence this Saturday, June 4th at 10 o'clock. Everyone is invited. Bishop Bonnie is working on a possible ballot initiative to allow Michigan voters to vote on gun safety laws that the legislature refuses to consider. And if it comes to that, that group is going to need petitioners and organizers. There's so much going on to push us inch by agonizing inch away from the culture of death towards a culture of life. But it is hard going, and the people who don't want anything to change are digging in their feet. We may still need to wash blood from our robes when we gather at that river where the bright angel feet have trod. The grip of the world is strong, the issues are immense. But how much better would it be when we find ourselves there? We find ourselves not washing out blood, but sweat and dirt from the work of the kingdom. Our hope comes in this. Hate, violence, fear, and greed may be woven into the foundations of society, but God did not weave them into the foundations of the world. Remember, God made everything and called it good. And Jesus on the cross cracked that false world, that society, wide open, so God's true intentions for us can finally begin to creep in. Amen.